Good evening, good evening. How's everyone doing this evening? One more time, how's everyone doing this evening? I'm so happy that you all are here. Can I ask you all to give yourselves a round of applause? I mean, you're here at 6 p.m. on a Thursday after work. Please give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. My name is Lakeisha Carr, and I have the pleasure to serve as the Director of Economic Development for Urban Grid. For the past 17 years, I have passionately provided community services and community engagement throughout Virginia. I have the pleasure to work with an amazing team that provides community engagement and economic impact in Caroline County. We truly care about Caroline County. The purpose of our presentation today is to provide you with an educational discussion around solar energy. It's a chance for us to come together as a community, as one united front, to learn more about that of solar energy and how it may positively impact Caroline County. You will have a chance to hear from a panel of experts, and at the end, we'll have a question and answer period where, for your convenience, we have placed comment cards in your chairs. Please use that to fill out questions, and we'll also take questions. But this is your chance. We want to hear from you so that we can have an open dialogue. And we're hoping that you leave here learning a bit more about solar energy and the positive impact that it can have on Caroline County, and also understanding our passion truly to work with you and wanting to partner with you to bring prosperity to Caroline County. I'm gonna go over a few housekeeping tips. To my left is the restrooms. I hope that you've helped yourself to refreshments. We are recording this discussion today, and so we hope that you will please silence your phones. The video will be available via YouTube. And then also at the end, what you can expect is, if you want to learn more about what we would love to do in Caroline County, we ask for you to join us and our team in the back. You can hear firsthand about what we would love to do and how we want to work with you on a community-focused project. So again, we can't thank you enough for being here. This is a truly great turnout, and we hope that, again, you walk away knowing that we care about Caroline County and we want to partner with you. With that, I'm going to hand it over to our moderator today, Nicole Cole.
Good evening, everyone, and again, thank you all for being here tonight to be educated, to get your questions answered, and to see how you can become a part of benefiting Caroline County into the future, where it has needs, whether that's in business or in farming. There's a number of things that come together. My background, I am a business owner in the financial services industry. I am also on the school board in Spotsylvania. I am a granddaughter of farmers, as well as being again, a business owner. And I feel like tonight we're going to combine a bit of education, business opportunities, as well as in understanding of energy and how that can potentially benefit or get our questions answered around any confusion on how our farming industry can be served by solar. So I'm looking forward to tonight, and hope as you listen, you will also write down your questions so that you can get all of your questions answered when we finish with all the questions that I had. So with that, we'll start at this end with introductions. Chris Ollson, can you introduce yourself?
Hi folks, my name's Chris Ollson. Looks like we might have a microphone running up here. I'm pretty loud anyway. There we go. And sorry, again, Chris Ollson. I have a PhD in environmental health sciences, and basically over the years, I've worked on everything from refineries, coal plants, natural gas pipelines, gas plants, and over the last 15 years, I spent a lot of time around the public health and safety issues around renewable energy projects. So wind turbines, of course, today we're here talking about solar, battery storage, and transmission lines. So tonight I'll be answering questions to do with public health and safety.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jordan Brooks. I work for Kimley-Horn. I'm a licensed civil engineer in the state of Virginia. I graduated from Virginia Tech with my bachelor's in civil and environmental engineering. I've been in practice for 8 years and have been focused on utility scale solar design for the last 6. I'm really passionate about sustainable energy and an all of the above approach for energy in the United States. And I really think that we can come together to design really reasonable and safe projects to allow us to produce our own energy here and produce a diverse profile of energy here in the United States.
Good evening, folks. I'm Robbie Smart. I'm from Halifax County in Virginia. I'm one of the Board of Supervisors. My background, I'm an engineer of education. I'm retired Air Force, and I'm also retired from NGA just north of here. Anybody knows who they are? Probably not. And I've been on the Board of Supervisors. This is my second term of about 6 years. Very interested in anything that can help Halifax County. I was told to mention Halifax County. If you don't know, it's on the Virginia-Carolina border, about due north of Durham. Very rural county. We're passionate about all of the above energy. We currently have a biofuel plant, a coal plant, and about 850 megawatts of solar going in. That's probably enough for me. National Geospatial Intelligence Agency.
Thank you. Federal employee.
Yes.
I'm Jess Gray. I'm the CEO of Gray's Landscaping. I'm a 2023 Nuffield International Farming Scholar, so I got to travel the world to study sheep economies and bring that back to Virginia to start to develop what a sheep economy in Virginia would look like. I'm a 2024 Virginia Rural Leader, so I spent last year traveling all over Virginia, all the little nooks and crannies, and getting to know every county and what makes rural Virginia so special. One of the things that's really important to Marcus and myself is the rural communities and how we can take this sheep economy and positively impact them. We have about 800 sheep grazing across the state right now. We're lambing, so at the end of lambing, we'll probably have about 1,100 sheep. And we're set to graze about 4,000 acres this year.
And we have them in Halifax County.
Yeah, so we're grazing 2 of the 4 utility scale projects in Halifax County. My name is Marcus Gray. As Jess said, we work with Gray's Landscaping. We're a vegetation maintenance service for solar, primarily using livestock to do the bulk of the work. I'm a wildlife biologist by training. It's been almost a 20-year career working in conservation, but I come from a farming family, and so I came back and started the operation and providing this service to solar. So we've been farming in Virginia for a long time and see a need for an opportunity to increase farm viability and give people new options, or maybe revisit options that were here about 100 years ago that we just don't have. At one time, Virginia had over 1 million sheep, and now we have 80,000 sheep. So there's a huge opportunity to grow the flocks in the state and support the broader economy.
So thank you all for your introductions. We're going to have a lively discussion. We have some pretty provocative questions tonight. I'm going to start with you, Chris. Yes. Awesome. So solar panels contain very small quantities of heavy metals. Is there a concern that these metals could contaminate the soil and groundwater? And in your experience and understanding of how panels are constructed, are you aware of any operational solar facilities where that has occurred?
Sure, it's a great question, Nicole. So many of you, if you've been looking on the internet to see what some of the risks are that are around solar panels, solar farms, may have come across this, excuse me, this notion that solar panels contain things like lead and cadmium and other aluminum and the like, and that somehow that's going to leach from the panels into the soil and then potentially impact your groundwater. Now, of course, we don't want that to occur. If you look at your cell phones, everybody's carrying one of these nice smartphones, I'm sure, in their pocket, right? There's a much heavier concentration of things like lead and cadmium and other metals in your cell phone. You've got the nice glass case here, right, similar to the glass case on the solar panels themselves. Now, in my experience, the screens have gotten a lot better. They don't break like they used to. They used to break one every 5 minutes, and we carry around a spider web looking like, phone forever. The reason it's safe to carry these around is because they're contained, right? So you wouldn't want to start eating your cell phone or even if the screen gets broken, you can even leave this thing out in the rain for several days, weeks, months, years. Nothing's going to leach out of it. And that's very similar to a solar panel. So the way that they're constructed, the way that the material is bound within the actual panels, there's nothing that's going to leach in. Sometimes you'll see on the internet, there have been occasions, there's a handful of solar farms, a couple in Texas, one up in Nebraska, where a severe hailstorm came through and then damaged all the panels. A very rare event, but it can happen. Even if that was to occur, right? Even if you had damage to the panels themselves, there's nothing that's going to leach into the panels that's going to get into the soil, contaminate the soil or your groundwater. So it's certainly something we understand as a concern that people have, but they're entirely encased in there. And it's not until you then go to dispose of the panels that you have to then treat them appropriately as you dispose of them. And I guess, Nicole, your second part was, have there been sites where that's been the case? No, there haven't. And so even on these sites where the panels have been damaged, or there's damaged panels at the site, they get removed quickly, then they're replaced. And we certainly in the soil testing that's been done around those panels, we have not seen any increased concentration of metals, or sometimes you hear about a chemical called PFAS that's in your phone screen as well. They don't leach out of the panels.
Thank you. I actually went to a information session on vapes last week in our school division, and didn't realize how many metals were in vapes. And it sounds like there's more direct exposure from vaping than from solar panels.
Yes, you don't want to vape.
All right, so next question. In the event of a fire, how should emergency personnel respond?
Yes, the first thing, of course, is that, again, solar panels are designed, Jordan's one of these people who, when they design the projects, they design the electrical, it all has to be done up to code. Things can fail, right? And so the most common, very rare, but the most common type of fire that you would get from a solar project would be faulty wiring, faulty connection from the panels to the inverters. And that can occur, it's rare. So the panels themselves don't catch fire. If there is a fire, it's going to be a grass fire underneath the panels. Okay, so it'd be like any other grass fire that you have in the county. And then what the key there is you might have some melting of the panels of that, but really what you're dealing with is a grass fire. What I say to all of my clients is, first and foremost, the biggest thing you got to do is meet with the local fire chief and the local firefighters. And I'm going to guess that most of your firefighters around this area are volunteer firefighters. So you have to do that training. It's nothing unique. They don't need any unique equipment. They're not asked to save the equipment in the event that there would be a grass fire at the site. And the firefighters are used to dealing with electrical fires. You folks have substations in the community. There's going to be a substation associated with any project that would be in the community. And they're already trained to do that. But then prior to construction and then just prior to operations, then the companies then train and meet with the local firefighters. They do a walk through the site, so they'll be familiar with the site itself. They can drive trucks into the site if need be, but really what you're dealing with is a grass fire, so it's more of a containment issue than it is something that would be a widespread problem for the community. And there's nothing, if there was to be a grass fire under the panels, if it was to catch, then the emissions from that would not be harmful or toxic to people living in the area.
So do solar panels raise the ambient air temperatures to an extent that creates environmental impacts or noticeable temperature changes? Sort of answered this a little bit, but temperature changes for people who live in the vicinity of where the solar panels are located.
Yeah, so that's called the heat island effect. And the easiest way to think about that we all know about is if we were standing in the parking lot here in the middle of summer and it was 105 degrees out, and you're standing in that asphalt parking lot outside of the church, it's going to feel hotter when you're standing right over the asphalt, right? If you're at a big asphalt parking area, you're at the Walmart, whatever have you. And the ambient temperature just above those parking lots, let's say it's 100 degrees out, can be about 110 degrees when you're standing right over it. But if you move just off that parking lot into the grassed area or just a few feet away, you're not going to feel that same temperature effect. On solar panels, there's been some mixed reviews and a number of different studies of measuring right above the panels. It can go up a couple degrees, maybe 2, 3 at most, just above the panels. But certainly once you get to the perimeter of the project, there's no heat island effect. There's no raising of the ambient temperature around the project. It does not, certainly doesn't affect the trees or the crops or any of the wildlife in the area. So no, it really doesn't.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate you answering those questions. We're going to move on to some questions for you, Jess and Marcus. First, what does your business do? And how, and I should say that again, when I read the bio, I thought I had you sort of misread grazing, landscaping. Okay. So what does your business do, and how many solar projects do you manage with sheep?
Yeah, so there's a $50 word out there called agrivoltaics, and it's just a fancy way of talking about pairing agriculture with solar or, renewable energy production. And so our role is to maintain the vegetation so that it's not eating up, and we're protecting soil quality, keeping soil in place. Maintaining vegetation underneath the panels actually helps keep the panels cool, which increases their efficiency of energy production, but and reducing that fire risk. So it's a nice balance. You want lush vegetation under there, not tall, dry vegetation, just like you think of fire risk anyway. So we use animals to reduce that fuel load, but also to improve the soil health by adding organic matter and producing a commodity. So pairing solar and farming is a massive opportunity because, we're a third party. We come in, company either builds and rents the land from the landowner, but we come in as a third party and we're creating additional business and additional revenue stream to the community in addition, outside of that. So, the landowner gets their payment, but then we get paid to manage the site as well. So there's a huge benefit there to just increasing the support that the communities get in terms of economic development. And so that's a lot of what we do is we just try to keep the vegetation properly maintained to protect the soil and prevent fire risk.
All right, so I'm gonna switch it up. Instead of asking all the questions to you all at once, we're gonna mix it up. So Jordan, what steps are taken to ensure the safety, durability, and sustainability of solar panels throughout their life cycle?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think Chris covers a lot of this as well in his discussions about the materials. But when you think about safety, a lot of times the discussion goes to hazardous materials, fire risk, and EMF or electromagnetic fields. So I won't go too much into the materials piece of it, but in summary, the materials that are used in the manufacturing of these panels do not pose a health and safety risk to the public. When you're talking about an EMF risk or electromagnetic fields, those can be produced by a lot of different things. Chris talked about your phone a lot of other electronics and radios as well. So the research shows that you're going to be safer standing next to the fence of one of these facilities than you are in your kitchen next to your refrigerator and your microwave. So I think that's a really important thing to remember, that there are a lot of other things producing these EMF frequencies that solar is not causing a risk to the public via that method. And then Chris talked a little bit about fire, and Marcus as well. The key to fire here on these facilities is vegetation management. Chris mentioned if you have a fire on these facilities, it's really going to be a grass fire. So making sure that you're maintaining the vegetation on site appropriately to ensure that you're protecting the facility and the surrounding landowners. I will say that these panels, they're not going to combust in the fire, so they're not going to fuel the fire. So the vegetation management is key there. From a durability perspective, the building code says that we have to design these facilities to withstand the same type of wind, snow, and other loading that any other building has to endure. So we're going to design these facilities in a way that they are up to code to be protected against those kind of weather events that could produce those loading. And then ultimately for sustainability, these facilities are designed to be operational for 25, 30 or more years. The panels themselves have power warranties that show that the panels will still be producing at around 80% efficacy at the full life term of the panel itself. Beyond that, there are a lot of recycling opportunities in the sustainability realm as well. So when you talk about decommissioning a facility, it's not just the panels that can be recycled, it's the chain link fence, it's all of the electrical cabling, it's the steel. So there's a lot of opportunities to kind of reuse these materials in the future.
Don't take my fence.
We'll keep the
Need
fence
that-
for the
need
land
that
for the
fence.
sheep.
Awesome. So Supervisor Smart, can you talk about some of the solar projects in your county and what were some things either before or after construction that were done well and what could have been done better?
Well, give you an idea, Halifax County is, land-wise, is,
I don't think it's on yet. Sorry.
only know if give you an idea, Halifax County is, third largest by land area in the state. Mostly, it was mostly agricultural. But so about 2017, I think we approved our first solar farm. We have 850 megawatts approved now. About half of them are operating. And what would be, not to go negative, but the worst thing we did early on was we didn't have enough buffer at the beginning. We started out with a 25-foot buffer. And we're now at 150. Been a lot of back and forth. My personal, it's probably 100 foot. It's probably really good. And mandating a 3 rows of evergreen trees, at least 6 foot tall when we start, offset, and so that we've corrected that one. One of the positive things we did, one of the largest facilities we built, is they put the inverters in toward the middle of the. They put the inverters toward the middle of the facility, and what that does, the only noise from these facilities are the fans that are in an inverter, and so by placing them in the middle, we've actually seen this. It's you have a hard time hearing it from the edge of the facility. So that would be one good, one bad. But,
Speak a little bit.
speak up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't understand any of that, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Let me try one more time. Negative, you need at least 100 foot of buffer. We started out with 25. Wasn't quite enough room to put in a good tree line buffer. On the positive side, comes to mind is put the inverters in the interior of the facility so that little bit of noise is actually I'm going to use absorbed by the panels around there, then you get very little at the edge.
All right, thank you. So back to you, Jess and Marcus. Can you explain how agrivoltaics works and the potential dual benefits of combining solar generation with agriculture?
Like your whole.
I should have taken the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for us, what it's allowed us to do, and a lot of other farmers that we've worked with, is it's another income stream. It allows us to grow. So as an example for us, 4 years ago, if you would have talked to us, we had 25 sheep. 4 years ago. This, after lambing cycle, will be at 1,100. So that's allowed us to grow our flock, which allows us a lot more wiggle room and to create more opportunity for our farming ventures and what we're trying to do. So that's a big part of what agrivoltaics offers. I tell everybody that it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for farmers to diversify. It's an opportunity for counties to be able to get money long-term after construction is really important. So everybody talks a lot about the jobs that are coming when it's being built, but there's a lot of jobs and opportunity after it's built. The impact to the feed store, the local feed store, the vets, shepherds, of course, the meat market, which we're trying to develop. There's a lot of opportunity that comes with agrivoltaics. And so that's kind of our big push, and that was what I studied for my Nuffield research, which was how can we get this sheep economy up and running, and what are our opportunities with it, and this ripple effect in such a positive way. That's what Marcus and I stand for a lot of the time. Is like, yes, we're doing well, but we're also seeing an influx of money in areas people wouldn't expect it. So Marcus makes a really great point. He was talking to a local farmer, and he's like, we buy a lot of hay. And so Wade, our hay guy, we were like, how have we helped you? And he was like, I bought more land to get more hay for you. So he wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't for us.
Well, there was a funnier interaction at the beginning of that. We're standing there, they just brought a semi-load with 10 round bales on it. So these are like 1,250 pound bales. So he brought 10 bales in the wintertime on a rental farm we have. And he goes, well, Mark, I don't know how I feel about this solar stuff. And I said, you cannot know how you feel about it all the way to the bank. He goes, oh yeah. It's like we're supporting all these ancillary businesses too. But to answer the beginning part of the question about how it works is most of these sites across the state, and we're chipping away at it, but most of the sites are mechanically mowed. And so, there's a labor cost to that. And there's, yes, it produces jobs, but a lot of that money tends to leave the state or even leave the country because a lot of the crews are, brought in from outside of the state. And so we're trying to get money to stay in the communities, be invested in the communities. We want employees to live in the communities, their kids to go to school here, that sort of thing. And so the way it works right now is there's a mowing contract. You bid on an RFP, a request for proposals. You submit your bid, and usually the lowest bidder gets the contract to maintain the vegetation. And so we're set up similarly with a vegetation management contract. We're just using sheep to do the bulk of the work rather than just burning gas. So that's kind of how it works. It's functionally, it's like we're compensated for maintaining the vegetation. So it's a whole revenue stream, cash flow for farming operation that doesn't exist currently. The usual model is, whether you're growing corn or you're raising sheep, you have to have the land, you have to have all your inputs, the seed, the fertilizer, you have to protect that crop, however you want to do that, chemically or otherwise. And then at the end of the year, you take it to the elevator in the case of corn, and they tell you what they're going to pay you for it. And you hope it's enough money to do it again the next year. So, with agrivoltaics, we're able to, if we have a flat tire, we can get it fixed. We don't have to wait until we sell lambs to be able to do that. And then, the lamb sales at the end of the year is kind of like found money. Like it could be, as our company grows, it could be the cost share or the revenue share that we give back to our employees. It's like, well, the lamb money, if we produce these lambs, that's in addition to the vegetation maintenance contract. So yeah, it's a whole big deal that people get a bit out of shape about solar and what it looks like, but really there's an opportunity here to support a broader economy and to do a lot of good.
Sounds like, I was thinking that one of the things that agrivoltaics does is creates just a new revenue avenue for farmers. But I like what you said, Jess, the sheep economy. I never really thought of it as actually creating another economy for the area where it benefits not just the farmer, but multiple business owners in the community, and it's a clean way to do it. Yeah, awesome. So Jess, no, not Jess. Jordan, other J name. So this question for you, Jordan. What materials are used in solar panel manufacturing? And are there potential health concerns associated with the use of these materials, maybe beyond the concerns about metals?
Yeah, so a lot of the materials used are kind of materials that we encounter day to day. So glass, polymer, aluminum, copper, and then your semiconductor materials. The semiconductor material is going to be based on the PV technology that's selected for the project. It's important to note that by weight, the material in the panel is over 3/4 glass. So very common material that we encounter. When you're talking about the technology that's selected by project, you're really looking at two main technologies, silicon or thin film technology. So silicon is basically these thin wafers are created out of silicon, patched together to create the PV cells, and that generates your PV technology that's housed within your panel. That material is the second most common material in the Earth's crust, so not a health and safety risk to the general public. Thin film technology is essentially layers of thin film semiconductor. A lot of times here in the United States, that is cadmium telluride. And again, this material has been researched, and the combination of the cadmium and the tellurium together to create cadmium telluride is not a public health and safety risk as it is installed in these panels. So generally, no.
Excellent. Supervisor Smart, how, and this sort of gets to what's the practical way that you have seen that the solar farms or solar projects have benefited the community, benefited Halifax in terms of revenue and community development? So what has that, sheep economy looked like from the perspective of a supervisor?
Well, the sheep economy is definitely there, but the big thing is that very often, from the negative side, people will approach me and go, "It's about the money." And I'm here to tell you, it is about the money. It's about the money that a farmer who was about to lose his land, that he now can keep it, and this does happen regularly. It's about the money that Halifax County gets, and we've been fortunate with their county administrator that we have, he's developed contracts with solar outfits, and we get both an increase in tax of the land, and also we get a percent of the profits. And so we have a very steady income stream over the next 30 years. And so that allows us to buy fire trucks and maintain our schools without raising your taxes. And to give you an idea of that fat number, we're halfway through, and we're looking at about $75 billion over the next 30 years for less than one use of 1% of our land. And not to disregard the sheep side of it, that's huge. That's new to us. I think we were 2 or 3 farms in that.
I wasn't gonna get into the siting agreements, that's your realm. So.
Yeah, and so that's where most profits, but certainly the buying the feed and the veterinarian fees, all that does come from the sheep. And I'm going to go off topic just a second. What's really cool about these guys is the dogs. But anyway, that's another story.
They're gonna have to tell us. They're gonna have to tell us about the dogs since you lay it in. But before you do that, because the next question is going to go to you, I'm so glad we go ahead and pass it, that you mentioned. We're just going through the budget process in Spotsylvania, and being on school board, one of the things that we're always sort of fighting for is more budget to be able to cover our schools. And I'm running for delegate now, which covers Spotsylvania and Caroline counties. And the more our local areas can raise funds for itself, then the state really can just, focus on that supplemental piece. And the local areas can really benefit the services that it can provide. And I would imagine for an area like Halifax, that being able to do more to generate more revenue is not an easy thing to do. So you're really using what you have most of, land, to be able to generate more resources to provide services to your community. Yeah, okay. So tell us about the dogs, and then I'll ask you the next question.
Are you referencing the guardian dogs or the collie dog?
The collie.
The collies? Yeah. So part of our sheep economy is dogs. It's a big part of what we do. So full-time with the sheep are our livestock guardian dogs. We raise Great Pyrenees and Anatolian dogs. They're big. They look scary. They're really dumb and stupid, but they know what they're supposed to do, so that's what's important. They're lazy during the day, so they lay around during the day because they protect the flock at night from all the predators. We haven't had any issues at the sites that we work for Urban Grid because our dogs have done a really good job, so that's positive. But everybody loves watching the collie dogs work, so we have 5 different collies. Each collie has a different job and a different personality. They're a lot like people. So my dog Dot is a lot like me. She's a little all over the place. But if we don't know where the sheep are, she can find them. They can be 2 miles away. She'll find them and always bring them back to wherever I am. Marcus's dog Trip does a little bit better. He's a little older. He only works for Marcus, so you could all yell his name all day long and he won't listen to anybody but Marcus. He works closer, does a lot of the gathering and the long drives on the road and things like that. That's all Trip. Then we have Colt, who's starting to work for me. He's a little bit younger. He's the flashy teenager. He likes to go fast all the time. He doesn't quite know what he does. Then we have Kimber, who's a little bit special sometimes.
She's high octane. I guess.
Yeah.
She works really fast.
She works for herself, is what she does. And then we have a dog that works really well when we're trying to work the sheep for the vet and things like that. But they each have their own personality, and it's everybody's favorite thing when they're on site. They're like, "Are the collies out?" And I'm like, "Send them out," and they go and they do their thing.
And it may be with the dogs, it may not be with the dogs, but what challenges do agrivoltaics face in a rural setting like Caroline County, and how can they be overcome those challenges?
Yeah, you start.
All right, I'll start. The biggest concern that we hear about is the visual nature of it. So like Supervisor Smart is saying is, people say that they don't want to look at the site. Which is kind of funny because, we graze for Dominion Energy too, and they always put us on sites that everybody's looking at all the time. So it's very visible, but on one hand, we do want people to know there's sheep out there so they keep their dogs home. That's most of what we have problems with is people's free roaming dogs, but the native predators are going to have a problem with. But yeah, and then there's a lot of misinformation about the things that have already been discussed about contaminants and the sheep being injured or adversely affected because the sheep actually thrive out there. We have access to thousands of acres that we wouldn't otherwise have access to. We don't have to rent it. We don't have to buy it. We don't pay the taxes on it. I get to use all this land to rotate animals, and they're really healthy out there. We don't have a parasite problem. We kind of leave the worms behind, as it were, because we just keep moving and give the pasture adequate rest. But other things, it's just a change in the traditional use. When people are already experiencing a lot of change in their lives, has been something that comes up a lot. Whether it's residential development or other commercial development, they see this as a farmland loss issue. And we're sitting here saying, well, we can use it to produce an agricultural commodity, and then we run into, well, it's not traditional. Well, I just told you we had 1 million sheep in Virginia at one time. So it was traditional for the World War I generation and back. We had sheep in this state. But in the county we actually live in Pennsylvania, we have about 50,000 cows. I don't know that Caroline has 50,000 cows, but Pennsylvania does. If we were to put just 3 sheep per acre on all the farms that have already been approved in Pennsylvania County, we could double the livestock in the county. That's going to have an economic impact. And if we're not careful, an environmental impact. So we want to make sure we manage these sites properly.
So I'm gonna pass it over to Jordan. And actually, Jordan, the next question you sort of answered, it was about recycling solar panels, what measures are in place to decommission or recycle solar panels at the end of their life cycle, and how is the industry improving recyclability? And because you've answered some of that, and I would definitely want you to expand if there's something that you missed. But how long, before they need to be recycled? What's the timeline?
Yeah, so every facility in the state of Virginia, as part of the permitting process, has to submit a decommissioning plan and cost estimate prior to construction. And that plan gets reviewed and approved at the county level. This plan outlines how the facility is to be decommissioned when that time comes, and outlines the potential cost that would be incurred by the entity who would be doing decommissioning. Different counties handle it differently in terms of salvage value and whether you can account for the money received by recycling and salvaging the materials. But generally, like I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of materials even outside of the panels on these facilities that can be recycled. We're leaving the fences for the sheep, but everything else can be recycled. So generally these sites are designed for a lifespan of anywhere between 25 and 40 years. I think generally we see around 30 years. And at that time, the facility will be essentially either decommissioned and returned back to an agreed upon condition with the landowner or with the county. A lot of times it's a meadow condition. The facility can be essentially like reviewed to see if a retrofit would be a good option. At that point, you would have to go back through the county Planning Commission Board of Supervisors process, but there is an avenue where that could be the case. But generally, we're looking at about 30 years.
If I just might add.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago with these smaller community solar projects, when they were end of life, you take the panels, you throw them in a landfill. We're just not seeing that anymore. So not only are we looking at 25, 30 years, when you do a construction of a large solar facility, you're going to break panels. Panels will be broken when they just by shipping, whatever have you. And what we commonly see now is that those panels are, they're removed from site and they're sent to a recycling facility. And how does that happen for the panels themselves? There's a number of different technologies. There's a number of new businesses right across the states that have opened up because there's no way we're going to be able to take these millions upon millions of panels across the U.S. and put them in landfill. It's just not going to happen. So there's various technologies, but there's some companies that strip them right down. They take the aluminum out. They do all sorts of things in the plant and recycle the materials themselves. Other facilities, they'll take the panels, they'll chip them up, and then they're used in asphalt material. So there's a number of different ways to do it, but gone are the days, I think I can safely say now, that a facility, any facility like this of this size or nature in Virginia or North Carolina or California is going to landfill. And then, so what we're seeing now, and some states are even putting it into state law that you have to recycle all the material. And then things like the galvanized steel struts, they're going into the ground. They all come up reused, recycled. So again, a facility like this after its lifespan is going to be, for the most part, almost entirely recycled or reused.
Excellent. So, back to you, Supervisor Smart. How have the landowners and residents responded to the presence of solar farms in Halifax? We talked about the people who are concerned about the visual. We have solar farms in Spotsylvania, but they're not really in eyesight. What about in Halifax?
Well, the visual is probably our biggest negative impact, because our first large sites were, as I said earlier, 25-foot buffer, which just wasn't enough to put any type of barrier. And right next to a road, so those sites are very visible. I don't think anyone thought early on that was going to be that big of a problem, but it is to some folks. But we've been, one of our other large sites was a few years later that, a lot of it has to do with the installer. And I'm Urban Grid, we work well with them and they work very hard to make things pleased. Not everybody does that. So my advice to Carolina County is look up the company that's working there and see what their reputations is like. I forgot where I was going with it. With Urban Grid, they've done a lot of good. With the later sites, now that we've got the buffers and we're hiding them, there's one, and I can't think of the name of the company. They went out of their way. I mean, they went to the neighbors beforehand and said, this is where we're planning on putting the panel. How do you feel about that? Before they drove anything in the ground, and then they came up with an agreement with every adjoining landowner. And some of them were still difficult. I mean, sometimes you get stuff that's, I don't mean to seem negative, but I call it flat earth comments, okay? And if I've offended someone, I'm sorry, but I know the earth is not flat. But the installer went out of their way to try to appease. They were worried about their phones. They were worried about the water. And one of the things Halifax County's done, even though we don't believe, and as an engineer, I'm sure there's no danger to the groundwater, we still put groundwater testing wells around these sites. And it becomes almost a negative. So, well, if it doesn't hurt our groundwater, why did you put in the wells? Well, we put the wells in to prove that it's not affecting your groundwater. And so if you work with the adjoining landowners, it works well. And there are some people who you're not going to please. We have one installation right next to, I mean, we're not a large county. I mean, we're a large county land-wise, and population-wise, only 30,000. But we have a neighborhood of probably 60 houses. And this facility is a 20 megawatt, not huge, but it's within 150 feet of 2 or 3 of the houses. And I can take you to their front yard and you don't know what's there. You can't hear it, you can't smell it, you can't see it. And they were really worried in the beginning, but we had a house sold in that neighborhood closest, and it sold for about 15% more than the assessed value. So, you know, that was after 5 years. So it's gone well. Once that facility is there for 2 or 3 years, we have no issues.
Sorry, can I have this into here? So being that we're on some sites in Halifax, one of the other things that we do is a lot of community stuff, but we run our sheep down one of the roads when we change paddocks. And
Safely blocked over.
we do everything safety first. We do all that stuff. But no, what I was going to say, what's really cool is the landowners and everybody comes outside to watch it. And so they'll come outside and they'll film it, or they'll get their kids, and or there's a poor lady, she misses it every time. She comes up after almost every drive and she's like, "Did I miss it?" And I was like, "Yeah, you did." Yeah, so we've, you know, they're just excited that there's sheep out there. And they're, you know, asking us, "Do you sell the lamb? Can we buy some?" You know, so we've kind of followed up nicely, I think, with engaging the people that are close by, and they love it because they get to, some of them can be a part of it in that way, so.
And to go along with the sight line, I mean, we had a meeting at Crystal Hill in Halifax, an urban grid site. And when the team at the meeting pulled up and they were like, "We didn't even know this was here. We're just driving along this country road." And then it's like, "Oh, here's the entrance." They had no idea. Like they would never, they said, "We never would have known this was back here." So and some of our other sites are on too. And there's a pine stand that goes, you know, at least 100 feet in Halifax that, you know, you wouldn't know it was there unless you were looking for it.
So Supervisor Smart, you answered another question a little bit. I just want to follow up, which was what were some of the other concerns concerns that residents had? And so you already mentioned site. You mentioned effect on water. Are there any other concerns that you can think of that raised by the community when you first considered solar?
Yeah, I'd say they've been mentioned. Fire, you mentioned water, you mentioned, working at the site, we mentioned, I'm trying to think, fire was one. We've actually had an incident with fire. It was a lightning strike. A little bit different in Halifax County. We found that the best thing to do is our firemen are called, but they don't enter these sites without someone that knows the site, knows how it operates, being there, because they're usually not big fires. So sound was mentioned a lot. I mentioned that a little bit. It's not a problem. I'm trying to think. One of the other biggest problem we had is the condition of the roads going to the site. I didn't mention that. I probably should have. Anytime you have a large construction project, the roads are going to take a beating, because these are roads typically not driven by tractor trailers, and they have a lot of them for a period of time. And that, again, after 3 or 4 years, this construction stops, the road gets repaired, and things are okay. I was trying to think of other concerns. Heat, you mentioned.
People talk about the wildlife corridors pretty good.
Oh, yeah. The wildlife corridors, I have had a concern that the fence wasn't good enough in my district. His hunting dog kept getting in the fence on me, so he would have to go call the proprietor to come open the fence so he could go get his dog.
Please keep on
Yeah.
And they're still trying to figure out how the dog's getting in there.
Smart dog.
On the topic of the condition of the roads and what happens during construction, These sites are required to, a lot of counties require the sites to have a pre and post-construction road eval performed. So what that entails is essentially before construction starts, we go out and we assess the condition of all of the leading roads into the major construction access points for the facility. We take pictures of the pavement, we video the drive, and really thoroughly document the condition of those roads. And then at the end of construction, what happens is that pre-construction road evaluation is reviewed with the DOT, and it's determined which deficiencies were a result of the construction. So it's not the taxpayers that are footing the bill for the damage that's occurring on the road during construction. It is the project's responsibility.
And I want to add on the fire, I mentioned lightning strike. The fire department was called, and it was out when they got there from the rain that came from the storm.
Excellent. So, Jess and Marcus, what are, and you've said some of these already, but just expand if you can, what are the benefits to farmers who participate in agrivoltaic programs, solar grazing programs, and what long-term benefits can farmers expect? And I'll add, can farmers or the community, okay, expect from participating in solar grazing programs, particularly in terms of sustainability and economic resilience?
That's a really good question. Yeah. I think, long-term, like I said, with the sheep economy, it is an opportunity. Marcus and I are really passionate about getting other farmers off the ground with sheep. So a lot of the people that work for us are actually folks that have retired either from ag or from general work, and they still want to work and they still want to do hands-on stuff. And so one of the guys that works with us was cattle and horses. He lived out in Colorado, so he's a real ranch guy, real big guy. And he likes working with the sheep because it's not nearly as hard on him as it was with everything else that he was doing. So what we found is it's a great opportunity for young farmers to have access to land to grow, to be able to do the thing they want to do. But it's also an opportunity for older farmers who are phasing out of cattle, horse, whatever it is that was a lot harder on their body. A sheep might run at you, but it's not going to knock you down. So it's an opportunity for older farmers to be able to stay within the network as well and make an impact. And then that also then benefits everybody else because that knowledge doesn't get lost. So one of the big things in farming that we've experienced through Marcus's farming family is farming loss of knowledge of how to treat the soil and how to make the ecosystem work together. And, Marcus went to school for it, and his parents and his grandparents had a lot of influence with that. But even looking at what his grandparents knew to what we have now, there's definitely been some loss with that. So one of the things we're trying to do is, hey, can we minimize that loss? Can we keep these farmers farming and the younger farmers learning from them, and everybody kind of benefits each other?
Yeah, and the practicality of the mechanism for how that works is like there's a landowner that has the majority, about half one of the projects that we're on in Pennsylvania County, and because he's getting basically passive income from the rental payment for the ground, he's able to reinvest in his operation and other enterprises that maybe at the outset wouldn't be solvent. He can basically underwrite these things until they get going. Like we're buying cows. Well, we wouldn't be able to buy cows if we didn't have the sheep revenue and the grazing revenue coming in. So, you don't even have to like sheep that much. It's like we also run a pumpkin patch at home and we sell pumpkins really cheap because we can afford to do that for the community. So kids come out and, it's not like a Midway. We don't have it's not like a rides or anything, but people can come out and choose a pumpkin in the field and stuff that we grow there. And we wouldn't be able to do that. We're able to sell meat for less than you can get at the box store to get more people engaged and increase access to local food, whereas we wouldn't be able to do that otherwise. So there's a lot of things like you're gonna be driving down the road one of these days and you're gonna see some enterprise, you have turkeys in a field and solar paid for it, you're just not gonna know.
So, that's really good to hear. We have, Future Farmers of America. I know there's a lot of young people who are interested and want to be able to be farmers and start farms. And it sounds like that would be an opportunity for them to have that passive income from the solar to be able to afford to buy land to be able to do farming, which I know is a barrier for young people who don't have the capital to be able to do that.
Yeah, we actually do a lot of outreach with FFA, 4-H. There's a local PCTC, got it right, organization that works with the high school. They're teaching, it's like it's a trade school, but one of the things is agriculture that they focus on. And we're going there and we're going to teach about a 3-hour course on agrivoltaics and what these young students can learn and to see that this is an opportunity for them as well, because we do have so much going in. So yeah, there's a lot of we do a lot of outreach to that generation and that group, because a lot of them are in this waiting game of they have to wait to inherit it, or they're, go somewhere else. Right? One of our biggest exports is farmers, because we tell the kids, you can't make money on this, get out of farming. And then creates that loss, so.
All right, so we have one more question. Let's see. Supervisor Smart, here we go. Well, here we go. What would you recommend to another county, like Caroline, who is considering a utility scale solar project to make sure they require the solar developer to do? I mean, you did mention one thing already, but anything else?
Yeah, there are many, but to keep it in a nutshell, Halifax County has been recognized by Energy Right in Virginia as one of the most forward counties with regard to solar and energy overall. So I would recommend visit us. I'll facilitate that. Ask to see the bad. And I can take you down one road with one of the best facilities we've got and one of the worst ones nearby. And we've also been recognized for our conditional use permit. And I would highly recommend, if you're going to allow solar, and I would be a proponent of that for a number of reasons, but make sure you do it in such a manner that each site requires a conditional use permit, which requires a review by your planning commission and your full board. And we have a suggested conditional use permit. Take hours, walk through it, and see what fits and what doesn't. But ours is quite comprehensive. And so visit us, get a copy of the conditional use permit.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we had some great answers and some dialogue, and now we want to make sure you're able to ask questions, anything that we missed.
Can we please give the panelists a big round of applause? This concludes the discussion part in our presentation this evening. We hope that you walk away learning a little bit more, but most importantly, curious to want to learn more. And so we want to give you 2 minutes to complete the comment cards, and then we'll go ahead and pass those up. Also, if you haven't had a chance to sign in, can we please have you sign in and help yourself to refreshments? Again, restrooms are to my left. And then we'll end with a question and answer period. And we hope to speak with you more, again, in the back for further questions about our project and our company. Thank you. Who's still enthused about what we're talking about this evening? Awesome, awesome. Again, we want to thank you all for your time. We really appreciate it. So we'll go ahead and transition to the question and answer period.
All right, and this first question would be for Jess and Marcus. How many sheep are needed to manage each square acre of a solar farm?
The easy answer is it depends. So there's a lot of factors that we use to look at stocking rate and stocking density. Feel free to Google the difference in the essence of time. But yeah, so depending on the past land use and what species were planted, what time of year, and how many animals dictates how long they stay in a paddock. So basically, if you were to just average across all the sites we've been on, we've grazed 10 or 12 sites now since we started this. The stocking is somewhere between 3 ewes per acre and 3 acres per ewe. So it just depends on it's newly constructed. The seed development is sensitive. You don't want to overgraze We want to encourage growth. We'll actually stock at a very low density. Keep the vegetation, keep the plants vegetative, seed head, increase root growth and things like that. And then over time, as the site gets more mature, it can support more animals. But yeah, we rotationally graze, so we move the animals during the winter time. That's usually up to once every 2 weeks. During the growing season, it can be twice a week. So it just varies drastically depending on the conditions.
Yeah, so there's two ways that we look at it a little bit differently than most people is they will take the whole acreage of the site and each paddock or each block, they call them blocks, each block that's fenced in, and we'll look at the acreage for that fenced in, and we'll take the largest block and base our sheet numbers on whatever that block looks like. Because as we're moving across the landscape, this block could be 150 acres, but this block could be 75 acres. So we don't take the total. If we pitch to you that we're grazing a 650 acre site, we don't look at the stocking we look at it at the landscape overall. And then one of the other questions that people don't realize is that the flock that starts will increase with natural growth, right? So those mamas will lamb, and they typically twin. And so we'll increase that way through the flock over time. And Crystal Hill, we've been on for over a year, so they're lambing right now for the first time over there. And it's really cool because they've only ever been there. So they were raised there, they were on that vegetation. And the site this year is getting more vegetation, so it should be able to handle those numbers across.
So, to give you an example, and we would do scale back for the winter too, because we try to keep the animals on the landscape throughout the year. But Crystal Hill is about half a section, so 320 acres inside the fence. This one will be about twice that size, I think, if it was approved. And essentially, we've got 300 animals on there right now. So that's kind of what it looks like. But we managed a site in Emporia 2 years ago. It's 1,300 acres. We managed it with 200 sheep. But the literature will tell you, you need to multiply that footprint, like Jess is saying, by 5 sheep per acre. You need 5,000 sheep. No, one, there aren't that many here, and 2, you'll destroy the place.
Excellent.
Is there anyone that would like to ask a question via the microphone and didn't have a chance to fill out the comment card? Going once?
How many acres are solar in Halifax County?
That's afraid someone asked that. I'm trying to remember some book was going to look for it, but we have it's less than 1%, 1.08% of our total county acreage is under solar panel right now. And you know what? Let me look that up. I hate to lie to people, but I actually have it here with me. I think I know the number, but I'd rather look that up.
Still very small.
But less than 1.08% of the total acreage in Halifax County. And me personally, just so you know, there's our limits. There definitely should be limits. And in my mind, that's 2 to 3% total. That's it. That's max.
5,794 acres.
That's right. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking it was just under 6,000, but I couldn't remember. Thank you.
So the next question, I think this is a good question, especially since our energy use as well as our energy cost seems to be ever increasing. So the question is, will the project reduce the cost of energy for Rappahannock Electric Co-op customers? And I don't know if that also applies to, I know more of our rural areas use Rappahannock Electric Co-op, but also for Dominion customers.
I've looked at that a lot because we get that question. And just to answer the question, yes or no, I'm going to say no right now. But it's not so much has to do with solar. It has to do, and I'm not casting negative about any industry, but data centers are huge energy hogs, and 35% of all the data centers in the country are located in Virginia. And for 2020, Virginia imported 20% of our electricity. Now, 4.5 years later, it's 40% of the electricity we import. Imported electricity is your most expensive electricity. Now, solar is your cheapest, believe it or not. It definitely is. It's gone downhill a lot in the last few years. Now, when you add the battery cost, it's about equal to natural gas. The most expensive is coal right now, and nuclear is right in between the two. But no, it's not. Until we do a whole lot more addition, it's not going down.
So let's see. So we have a number of questions on here, so I'll ask the ones that seem to be marked important. Decommissioning plans, end of project support for landowners is leasing. Is that a statement? Okay. I don't know if that's a statement or a question. Who might have asked that? It says
I see a card like the back card.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. So how will you work to include small, beginning, young, and minority farmers in recruitment for participation in agrivoltaics projects? What does the recruitment process look like? And, that question's for you. One thing I just want to add to this that I realized, I did a tour of one of our carpentry union training facilities recently and just found out that for constructing the sites, we actually, some of our carpenters unions actually learn how to construct solar farm sites. So, yeah.
So we have, like I said, with the 4-H groups that we worked with, the FFA groups that we work with, we've also started partnering with universities and colleges and technical colleges, and we're trying to get this mentality out. VSU is actually going to our site, one of our sites next week. They're looking at building a program specifically for agrivoltaics because they already produce sheep farmers and goat farmers, and so they already have that ag side. So we're bringing in the other side of that to try to work with them. So we are actively trying to create these opportunities. One of the other things that we're trying to do here is the harvest program. So one of my ideas, about a year ago, I guess it was this idea of why don't we have more community engagement and opportunity? Why are we always hiding these solar farms behind these buffers? If it is a great opportunity and it does a lot of really good stuff, we shouldn't be afraid to engage people, to grow it, to show what it can do. So with the harvest building, we're looking at it as an educational opportunity. We want people to come and learn about the sheep under the panels. We want to plant stuff under the panels so we can show people what the capabilities of it. It's not just limited. One of our friends, Ollson Wickham, owns Stiller Pollinator, and we're trying to get her bees on sites and trying to get people to understand what that market can do. So I've hashtagged bee economy for her. We haven't decided how many bees are in that yet. But that's just one of the other opportunities that we're trying to get people to understand that there's so much more to it. Sheep are just kind of the gateway. We can do a lot with it, and we're just trying to get those young farmers to think. There's a program actually out in Indiana that engaged a local elementary school, which I think is so cool. And so the kindergartners are planting the seeds, and the middle group is tending them in the greenhouses, and then the older ones are planting them. And then they go to the middle school, and they actually brought these problems to the middle school. They found out that they had some mice eating wires on site, and they were like, this is really bad. What are we going to do about it? And these kids are so smart. They printed through 3D printers ways to keep the mice out of the wires. Middle school kids. Like, if we engage with them and we ask them to problem solve for us, they're going to be able to do it. And so that program out there has had a lot of ground and a lot of growth. Sarah Mosier is doing a project but it's between the rows. So she's planting crops between panels, engaging farmers who don't want to work with animals. So there's just a lot of opportunity. And with the harvest program, that's one of the things that we're trying to tap into. So if you don't like sheep and you don't want to work with animals, that's okay. Do you like bees? Do you like crops? What do you like? Let's try it. Let's look at it. Let's see its viability, and just try to grow with what we can?
The limiting factor right now is actually access to projects to farm. So like I said, most of these sites are currently mowed because people understand that and they're comfortable with that. And they get the result that they want in a timely manner. And so it's a paradigm shift to be managing these sites as pasture rather than a lawn. And so it's getting people to consider that these sites should be managed in a different way. But if we don't have the projects, we don't have places for people to be employees or to be sole proprietors, to manage, to grow their business. So that's really where the limiting factor comes in, is because like Jess is on the board of the American Solar Grazing Association, and they have a certified grazer training program where you go and sit for like 3 days and talk about the whole industry and how to operate and how it works. But we're producing people that, we have workforce development happening already, but we don't have places for these people to work.
And we have a question in the audience.
Does any of the power generated by these facilities stay in the county, or does it all go back to Dominion to be redistributed?
Well, there's two categories of, there's what we call large scale, small scale. I don't know if it's the right term for the industry, but the 5 megawatts is the break. So if it's 4.99 or less, that's small. Above that is utility scale, well, they're all utility scale. The big ones, it goes to the grid, okay? We have no control whatsoever where that, when I say the grid, the 230 volt, the high power transmission lines, okay? The under 5 megawatts goes into a local, I forget the voltage, it's 115 3-phase, it's much smaller. That is consumed locally unless there is unless there's less produced than the demand, and then that will backfeed. We don't think that happens, but it could. And there are several projects where the solar producer is required to give that power to disadvantaged homes in the area, so they get it. Their cost would be reduced, but that's only from the less than 5 megawatts.
Right.
So generally, one of the questions are any of the panelists being paid tonight to present this information?
Answer is yes. This is what I do for a living, right? So this is my area of expertise. This is what I do across North America. So next week I'm going to be in Arkansas dealing with the solar battery storage project. Week after I'm in Kansas on wind. But it's bringing the information both like to folks like yourselves, but also when we get into commissioner or supervisor county meetings, so that these projects are properly cited. One of the issues that Commissioner Smart brought up was in his older projects, the inverters were placed wrong. And that's a horrible thing. So what is an inverter? Basically, the solar panels produce DC electricity, and it's got to get converted to the AC that we all use that's up on the lines and everything else. Those things are noisy. If you're standing right beside it, they're noisy. And if you put that beside grandma's house, just on the edge of the fence of the property line, that is a bad thing. So it's helping set the standards, helping make sure that these projects are safe for any of the communities that we're in. But yes, of course, I was paid to be here tonight. This is what I do for a living.
Are you all answering this question? Yes, I also am being paid to be here tonight as a resource for Urban Grid to answer any of your questions about civil engineering for these facilities. We've been involved with Urban Grid for many years and have designed many of their projects here in Virginia and across the country. So again, this is what I do for a living, and I'm a resource to you as a community and to Urban Grid.
My answer is no, zero. As I told Val that I wouldn't even let them pay my way up here because I don't want any check from them going to me or any solar outfit, and or any funds. I didn't even eat dinner here. I reserve the right to provide 501c3 organizations in Halifax County looking for donors for Dixie Youth, Dixie Girls, or fire departments. And that'll be between them and them, not me.
And I'm volunteering my time. I am not paid to facilitate this panel tonight.
I've not been paid.
Well, I mean, okay, so, yeah, I guess it's complicated because when we started this, the whole goal was that we would be able to get solar contracts someday to be able to support our farm business. So, yeah, that scheme, it was self-serving. But now, we do have solar grazing contracts, but I've been, and it's all over the media, been to over 20 counties to talk about solar and the benefits and why I think it's important for companies that I haven't worked for or worked with. Hopefully in the future we work with them, but a lot of them we've never worked with.
Yeah, and I would say as a board member for the American Solar Grazing Association, one of my jobs is also to promote more farmers getting involved in agrivoltaics. So it's probably and it's a volunteer board position too, so I don't get paid for that either. But our goal is to grow it as much as we can. So that's what this opportunity is for us.
So this question's for Jordan and maybe Chris. Does decommissioning include removing underground structures so a farmer can plow or a landowner can sell for development if that's what they choose?
Yeah, so I think decommissioning can generally include removing any infrastructure that is placed within 3 feet below the subsurface. Everything else generally is abandoned in place per the methods based on what material is being abandoned. But anything 3 feet or above will be removed as part of the decommissioning process.
And of course, the reason why is that's below the till depth, so that you can farm it. They choose to farm after, choose to do whatever they want there, that's removed.
In Halifax County, we also, if the topsoil was disturbed, removed, generally we don't allow to flatten the land, but if it was removed, we require them to put it back. And in some places where they've removed it, they've stored it on site in the form of berms, but they're required to put it back.
I think this is the last question that I have here, or do you want to go?
Yes, we have one question in the audience.
Yeah, this is for the grazers. How often do you need to go over any particular patch of land per year?
Yeah, so per year. So it's kind of like what Jess was talking about. Kind of what Jess alluded to or was talking about is we take the footprint of the property and we divide by the time we want to take to get around, if that makes sense. So like we start as a base, just to give you an example, like, okay, we want to get around the whole farm in 30 days. So how long do they just spend 2 or 3 days in a paddock or 2 weeks in a paddock to get around? And so like when you're mowing these sites mechanically in Virginia, especially south side, you're mowing 4 times a year on average. Yeah, so we're grazing these sites 3 to 5 times usually.
Yeah, per paddock.
Yeah, per pet. Yeah, that's what I said, each pasture.
And I'll close out with this question, because since there's one question about which panel technology has been selected for this project, but we're not talking about a specific project. So I guess the next question was, are they American manufactured, the solar panels, or so do the parts come from different places, or, I don't know if you know the source of the parts of the solar panel.
Yeah, our research says if they are silicon panels, they most likely come from overseas right now. If they are cadmium telluride, that's a U.S. patented technology. They most likely come from the U.S. And how does that mean? In Halifax County, probably 80% of the panels are silicon, so they came from outside the U.S. And the others came from outside the U.S. The cadmium telluride. Cadmium telluride, the only one from the U.S.
So that's all the questions.
I would like to open it up for one last question.
Well, I've got a couple of questions because one, the elephant in the room is the CC Solar was denied in Caroline in September 2022, and the solar ordinance was repealed. So I don't really know why they're here, because they can't apply. The second question is Halifax County. I've read reports that they are using the cadmium telluride for solar panels, and their Foxtown Solar, when they were constructing it, all those broken panels, they were dumped illegally in people's, on farms. And then they were mysteriously picked up and some were dumped in the Amelia County landfill. So you talk about recycling the panels, but these were all dumped. So why were they not recycled then?
Well, I didn't answer the recycling question, but my understanding is from them and others, the recycling is still new. Most of the damaged panels, at least in Halifax County, that were landfill. I also sit on the Southside Regional Service Authority, which operates the landfill in Amelia. And yes, we do take both EPA or Virginia DEQ require no special handling of silicon or cadmium telluride panels, and they do. So damaged ones do come at the same price as the rest of the garbage we bring in. And you are correct. There is one facility. I thought I made that in Halifax County, a larger one that is cadmium telluride.
Okay, that concludes our question and answer period. For specific questions related to any urban grid projects, we welcome you to please join us in the back. We would love to speak with you one-on-one. This concludes the educational portion of our solar energy discussion. Also being passed around are comment cards. We would love to get your feedback. This is our first time doing this. We wanted a way to really connect with our Caroline County community. And so we would love to hear from you on how we can be better and how we can work together. Again, I appreciate you so much for your time. Thank you. And this concludes our presentation.